I don't remember exactly when the stories began, whether it was during childhood, whispered by cousins during power cuts, or much later, on nights when the world felt too quiet. But I do remember the first time I heard the question, "Have you seen the men in the trees?" It came from my uncle, spoken offhand as though he was recalling a memory that wasn't fully his, the kind you say without thinking, the kind that later makes you wonder, why did he say it like that? At the time, it felt like one more strange adult sentence I wasn't meant to understand. But over the years, the question followed me, like a soft echo that trails behind your footsteps long after the path has ended. Back then, I lived near the edge of a small northern town. Nothing special. A place where the nights arrived early and the roads felt wider than they should, like they were made for more people than ever came. Behind our house stood a dense tree line, not a forest, just a long corridor of old towering trees that stretched beyond the backyard like a wall of shadowed trunks. During the day, the trees were harmless, just quiet silhouettes swaying gently in the wind. But at night, they felt like watchers, as if something was standing between them, hiding just enough to be almost unseen. I never thought much of it until the evening when everything began. The night air felt wrong. It was late autumn. The last light had drained from the sky, leaving behind that pale blue that looks almost brittle. I stepped outside for no particular reasons, just to breathe, I think. Sometimes the house felt too tight, too full of unspoken things. The air smelled of dry leaves and cold earth. Nothing unusual. But then something made me pause. Not a sound, not a movement, just a feeling, the quiet shift in the atmosphere when you realize you're no longer alone, even if you can't see anyone. The tree line looked darker than usual, as though the shadows between the trunks had thickened, coagulated into something with weight. I leaned forward slightly, squinting. There was something. Not a full figure, not a person, just a vertical shape, taller than any branch, too still to be part of the wind. I blinked, and it was gone. For a moment, I wondered if my mind had simply created it, like how you see shapes in clouds or faces in wood grain. But then the air shifted again, a faint rustle, not from leaves, but from something heavier, measured, deliberate. My breath softened, instinctively quiet, and from somewhere deeper within the trees, I heard it, a soft tapping sound, not loud, not aggressive, rhythmic, almost like knuckles brushing the trunk of a tree. Once, twice, then nothing. The silence that followed felt stretched, like the world was holding its breath. I should have gone back inside, but something held me in place. Not fear, something closer to curiosity, the kind that takes root before you realize it's growing. After a long moment, I whispered, "Who's there?" And the trees answered with nothing. Just quiet wind, just swaying branches. Still, the feeling didn't leave. It lingered in the center of my chest, slow and heavy, the sensation of being noticed. The old question returns. I went inside, trying to shake off the unease, but as I closed the door behind me, my uncle's old voice drifted back from a memory I didn't know I still had. "Have you seen the men in the trees?" The strange tone, the casual dread in his words, the way he said men, as though plural was the only possible way. At the time, it sounded like folklore or a joke. But now, standing by the window and staring at the tree line, I felt something I had never felt before. He wasn't asking out of curiosity. He was asking out of warning. I didn't sleep well that night. And by the next evening, I would learn that the question held more truth than I ever imagined. I didn't sleep well that night. Even when I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that crooked silhouette perched in the branches, motionless, almost patient, like it was waiting for something. But morning has a strange way of softening fear. When sunlight finally slipped through my curtains, the memory felt distant, like a half-remembered dream. The forest looked harmless from my window, bathed in a warm, pale gold. I convinced myself that whatever I saw last night wasn't real. Maybe I was tired. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. Maybe a sound interrupted my thoughts. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the window. My chest tightened for a second. I turned slowly, expecting, I don't know, a shadow, a handprint, something awful. But no. Just a small gray bird hopping along the sill, pecking at the glass like it was trying to deliver a message. I almost laughed at myself. "Get a grip," I muttered. Still, something felt off. The morning air had a strange stillness, as if the forest behind my cabin was holding its breath. Even the usual rustling of leaves felt muted, muffled, like the world had turned down its volume. That uneasy quiet stayed with me throughout breakfast, but I kept pushing the thought away. A conversation I didn't expect. Around noon, I decided to walk into town, partly for groceries, mostly for distraction. The trail from my cabin wound through tall pines, their branches forming a shadowy arch overhead. I'd walked this path dozens of times, but today the silence made each footstep sound too loud. When I reached the edge of the forest, I found old Eli sitting on the bench near the bus stop, like he always did. Eli was the kind of man who looked like he'd been carved out of the mountains themselves, wrinkled, weathered, quiet. He rarely talked unless he had to. When he saw me, he squinted. "You look tired," he said. "Trouble sleepin'?" I hesitated. Should I tell him? I wasn't sure why, but something about his eyes made me think he already knew the answer. I saw something in the forest last night," I finally said.
He didn't react much, just slowly leaned back. "What'd you see?" "A man," I said. I swallowed. "In the trees." The moment I said it, a faint shift moved across Eli's expression, so small I almost missed it. His gaze drifted to the tops of the pines behind me, like he was checking if something had followed. "You sure it was a man?" he asked quietly. "I think so. It looked like one." He sighed. Not surprised, more like resigned. Then he said something unexpected. "Most folks here know better than to look too long at the tree line after dark." A chill crept up my spine. "Why?"
Eli didn't answer immediately. His hands trembled slightly as he folded them. "There are old stories, older than this town, older than any of us. Stories about shadows that mimic what we know. Not people, not animals, just watchers." I felt goosebumps crawl across my skin. "Watchers?" I whispered. He nodded. "They stand still, they wait, and they only show themselves to the people the forest hasn't decided about yet." "The forest decides what exactly?" I asked. But Eli didn't get the chance to finish. A sharp crack echoed from the woods like a branch snapping under weight. We both turned. Nothing moved. Nothing visible, at least. But I could feel it again. That same silent heaviness from the night before. That same invisible presence. Eli stood up slowly. "Go on home before evening falls," he said. "And don't open your curtains tonight." Then he walked away, leaving me staring into a tree line that suddenly felt far less familiar. The forest watches back. I hurried home with the uneasy feeling that something was following me. Not footsteps, nothing that obvious. More like a tension, a weight on the back of my neck. When I reached my cabin, I locked the door even though it was barely 3 p.m. I tried to distract myself, reading, cleaning, making tea, but the hours crawled. Each time I glanced toward the window, the trees seemed closer. As the sky darkened, Eli's warning echoed in my mind. "Don't open your curtains tonight." So I didn't. I kept the windows covered, the lights dim. But covering the windows doesn't make you forget they're there. It just makes you more aware of every tiny sound outside. And the forest was full of sound tonight. Rustling, soft thumps, a distant scraping across bark. Things that could have been animals or something else.
Around 10 p.m., a sudden quiet fell over the woods. The kind of quiet that hurts the ears. Then, tap, tap, tap. My blood ran cold. Not the bird from the morning. This was heavier, slower, intentional. It came from the window directly behind me. I froze, didn't breathe, didn't move. Another tap. Then a long, dragging sound, like a hand sliding down glass. The curtains hid whatever was out there, but somehow that made it worse. Not seeing felt like an invitation for imagination to fill the void. My heart pounded so hard it almost drowned the next sound. A whisper, muffled, indistinct, coming from the other side of the glass. I leaned forward just enough to hear, and that's when I realized something. The whisper wasn't asking to come in. It was asking if I could see them now. The air around me felt heavier than before. It wasn't cold, but it had a weight to it, as if the forest itself had begun listening. A thin ribbon of fog curled along the ground, drifting between the roots like it knew exactly where it wanted to go. And as I walked deeper, I noticed something strange. The forest was too quiet. No wind, no insects, no distant rustling of leaves, just the faintest hum, almost like a vibration beneath the silence, the kind you don't hear with your ears, you feel it somewhere behind the ribs. I slowed my steps. For a moment, I wondered if I was still on the same path. The trees around me seemed taller here, almost unnaturally tall, their trunks stretched like they had grown in a hurry, pulled upward by something they couldn't resist. And then I saw it. Not a person, not a figure, just a shape. High above the ground, maybe 20 feet up, something shifted between the branches. I didn't hear it move. I sensed it, the way you sense something large drifting just out of sight. I stopped walking. Very slowly, I lifted my eyes. There was nothing there, not anymore, but the branches still trembled, as if something had just been there a moment ago. My heartbeat thudded softly, but not from fear. It was something else, a strange, rising curiosity mixed with an emotion I couldn't name, something like recognition, like I had been here before, or like something in these woods remembered me. I took another step. The ground felt softer, spongier. Another step, then another.
The trees around me weren't just tall now, they were leaning, all of them subtly angled inward, toward the center of the forest, toward me. It felt like entering a quiet cathedral made of roots and shadows. Then, from behind me, a sound finally broke the silence. A single, slow knock. Tock. A pause. Tock. It didn't come from a tree trunk. It didn't come from the ground. It came from somewhere above. My breath caught. I looked up again, more carefully this time. Between two thick branches, just for a fraction of a second, something pale reflected the dim light, like a face that wasn't quite a face, watching with stillness that felt almost patient. And then it was gone again. But this time, the forest didn't fall silent. I heard breathing. Not human breathing. Not exactly.
It sounded like leaves being drawn inward and slowly exhaled outward, almost like the whole forest was breathing with me. I felt a pull, not physical, but emotional, like the woods were inviting me deeper, urging me to see whatever it was hiding. The strange part was, I wanted to follow. Even if every instinct in me whispered that nothing about this place was normal anymore, something inside me felt warm, almost comforted, like a memory resurfacing after years of forgetting. And somewhere above the trees, that pale shape shifted again. Not threatening, not aggressive, just waiting, watching, almost as if it had been waiting for me alone.
I see you. The breathing stopped, and the forest finally answered, but not with a voice, with movement. Someone stepped carefully along the branch high above. The silhouette was tall, impossibly tall, its limbs long and slow-moving, as though made of the same wood as the forest itself. It didn't approach, it didn't hide. It simply stood there and tilted its head. A gesture so gentle, so strangely human, that it filled me not with fear, but with a calm, trembling curiosity. Like whatever lived in these trees wasn't here to harm me. It just wanted to be seen.
The forest felt different the next morning. Not hostile, not welcoming, just aware. I woke up before sunrise, long before the birds had decided to try their voices. The air was thick with the kind of cold that doesn't bite, but lingers, watching you. I stepped outside the cabin and listened. Nothing. Not a single leaf moved, not a branch shifted, not even that faint hum the forest usually carries, like it's breathing in slow motion. It was the kind of silence that doesn't simply exist, it presses. And somewhere inside that silence I sensed it again, the feeling of being observed from above, not by an animal, not by the wind, by something that understood waiting.
As I walked the narrow path behind the cabin, frost cracked quietly under my shoes. My breath curled upward, disappearing into the dense branches. And then I noticed something strange. A set of footprints beside the trail. Not human, not animal either. They looked like someone had leaned down from above, as if a hand, not a foot, had lightly touched the ground. 5 long indentations, perfectly spaced, perfectly deep, like the forest had been touched by something that didn't belong to it. I crouched, brushing my fingers across the frost. The moment my skin touched the frost, a whisper shifted through the trees. Not a voice, not quite. More like a sound that had forgotten how to be a sound. A soft, dragging breath, and it came from above. The men don't climb, they arrive. I looked up slowly, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light between branches. At first, I saw nothing but silhouettes of leaves. Then, the shapes changed. Something
Someone moved quietly between the treetops, just out of sight. Not climbing, not hanging, almost as if they appeared wherever the branches allowed them to exist. A subtle displacement of shadow, a shift in the outline of a pine limb, an impression of long limbs bending the wrong way, but never fully revealing themselves. I held my breath. The trees held theirs too. And for a moment, everything in the forest was just the echo of a heartbeat. I wasn't sure if it was mine. A warning or a welcome? The whisper returned, softer this time, drifting gently from the canopy like snowfall. It wasn't words, but it felt like meaning, like a question I hadn't learned how to answer yet. As the sound faded, I noticed something new. A small wooden figure hanging from a branch, a carving of a person, thin and elongated, its arms stretched downward unnaturally. It swayed with no wind to move it. At its center, carved with careful precision, was a single symbol, a circle with two vertical lines inside. The same pattern I had seen yesterday, carved into the tree and on the frost, and faintly glowing in my memory. Whoever or whatever made these marks, they wanted me to follow. The path that wasn't there yesterday. The forest floor was normal yesterday. I remembered it clearly, but now a narrow trail had appeared, lined by stones that looked hand-placed, though covered with moss thick enough to be ancient. The trail cut deeper into the woods, toward the densest part of the forest, the place locals said even birds refused to sleep. I hesitated. For a long moment, I debated going back to the cabin, but the whisper returned again, this time closer to my ear, like breath brushing past my skin. I didn't jump. I didn't run. It wasn't frightening. It felt familiar, like something long forgotten was calling me home. So I stepped forward, and the forest felt like it exhaled. The truck hummed beneath us as we drove deeper into the forest road. The headlights stretched forward like two trembling swords, cutting the darkness into shapes that didn't fully hold together. Owen sat beside me, hunched forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the windshield as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel afraid anymore. Not exactly. It felt more like the air held a secret, and I was finally close enough to hear it breathe. The pines leaned overhead, heavy and quiet. The moon was thin tonight, barely a frost-white line. Every branch, every shifting shadow outside the window felt like it was waiting, not moving, just watching. I tightened my fingers around the small object in my pocket, the one I'd taken from the tree earlier, the smooth wooden shard with that faint carved line, almost like part of a symbol. I still couldn't explain why I took it. Curiosity, instinct, or because something in the trees wanted me to. Owen finally exhaled.
"You shouldn't have touched anything," he said softly. I turned toward him. Why? His jaw tightened, as if the answer was too heavy to hold in his mouth. Instead, he reached out and flicked the dashboard light on. The soft glow washed over us, pale and muted. His hand trembled, just barely, but enough. "Owen," I whispered, "what's going on?"
He didn't answer, not directly. Instead, he asked, "Back there, when you first saw them, what did it feel like?" I swallowed. It felt like I wasn't supposed to see them, like they were standing perfectly still, but also waiting, he finished. Yes. The forest road narrowed. The trees pressed closer, canopy thickening overhead until the stars disappeared. The world became all pine bark and shadow. Owen nodded slowly, almost to himself. "That's how it starts." "How what starts?" I asked. But again he didn't answer. He clicked the headlights to high beam, and that's when we both froze. Because for a split second, just long enough to doubt my own eyes, the beams illuminated something hanging from a low branch overhead. A shape, thin, tall, still. Its silhouette stretched downward like a figure suspended in midair, but the moment the truck rolled beneath it, the shadow vanished, almost as if it had flattened itself against the tree, blending with the bark. My heart kicked once, heavy enough to feel in my throat. "Owen." "I know," he whispered. He didn't slow the truck, didn't speed up either, just kept driving as if anything sudden might draw attention. The road curved and the trees opened slightly, giving me my first glimpse of the forest floor again. And there, far back between the trunks, was another one. A tall, unmoving outline. Just standing, facing us. No face, just the impression of a head, shoulders, long arms. The moment the headlights swept past, it faded into the darkness again like mist. I pressed myself back against the seat, feeling the weight of their presence behind the glass, behind the night, behind the noise of the engine. "Owen?" My voice was barely a breath. "We're being followed." He didn't nod, didn't look at me. He simply whispered, "They don't follow. They gather." A cold ripple ran across my skin. Gather for what? He hesitated for a long, long moment. For whoever saw them. The truck's engine growled as the road dipped downward, the forest thickening again around us like a throat closing in. The darkness felt heavier now, more aware. I looked out the window again, another shape, still, then another, some closer, some farther back, nearly silhouettes, all watching, not moving, but I could feel the quiet intention in their stillness. And then quietly, Owen said, "How long did you watch them?" The question didn't sound like curiosity. It sounded like worry, fear even. I forced myself to answer. "Maybe a minute? Probably less." He flinched, a tiny, subtle wince. "Owen," I whispered, "what does that mean?" He finally looked at me then, not angry, not panicked, just sad.
"It means," he said softly, "they saw you back." A slow chill spread through my chest, gentle but complete, like cold water filling a cup. The truck rounded another curve. The beams swept across the woods. And this time, there were more of them.
Not hiding, not blending, standing out in the open. Tall, thin, silent figures, some near the trees, some right at the edge of the road, all watching. I grabbed the side of the seat. "Owen, stop the truck. Something's wrong. They weren't this close before." They never get close unless they've chosen someone. Chosen for what? His hands tightened on the wheel. His throat worked once. He didn't look at me.
Chosen to remember. The air felt suddenly still, so still that even the truck seemed to quiet. What am I supposed to remember? Owen shook his head slowly. "Not yet," he whispered. "They reveal things slowly, always slowly." The figures outside drifted backward as we drove past, not walking, not stepping, just shifting position, almost like the trees were turning with us. Owen sighed, a long, tired exhale. "You should never look at them directly. That's the rule." "And I broke it," I whispered.
"You didn't just break it." His voice softened further. "You invited them." The engine rumbled again beneath us like a distant warning. "And once they're invited," he added, "they don't leave until they've shown you what they came for." I slowly turned toward the window. One of them was only a few feet away now, standing between two pines, tall, motionless, head tilted slightly, as if listening, not threatening, not attacking, just waiting. And through the thin gap between the branches, I swear, I saw it raise one long, narrow finger and point deeper into the woods. Not at me, not at the truck, but at something far behind the trees, something I couldn't see yet, something I wasn't sure I wanted to. My breath shook. "Owen, what are they pointing at?" He swallowed. "That," he said carefully, "is what they want you to follow." The air went painfully still. And then, just above a whisper, he added, "They want you to see where they come from." The next morning, I woke with a sensation that felt like a memory brushing the edge of a dream. Soft, cold, and strangely familiar. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then the smell of pine drifted in through the cracked cabin window, and the quiet hum of the forest brought everything back. The figures, the whisper, the man in the trees. I sat up slowly. The room felt different, as if someone had been standing inside just a few seconds before I woke. Nothing was out of place, yet something in the air held a kind of weight, like a presence had been waiting and slipped away the moment my eyes opened. A thin strip of morning light spilled across the wooden floor, landing directly on something I didn't remember leaving there. A pine needle. Just one. Perfectly centered. Almost as if it had been placed. I knelt beside it. There were no pine needles inside the cabin yesterday. I had swept the floor before sleeping, more out of anxiety than cleanliness. But now, this. I picked it up. The moment it touched my fingers, a faint shiver crept through me. Not coldness, more like a vibration,
a tiny pulse, almost like it was holding a memory I hadn't learned yet. I set it gently on the table. Outside, the forest was still, too still. No birds, no early insects, not even the soft rustle of branches. It was the kind of silence that felt deliberate, a quiet that was listening. I stepped outside, and there, on the ground, not far from the cabin, were more pine needles, arranged in a faint line, a trail, all pointing in a single direction, as though laid by hand. My throat tightened. They were leading back toward the deeper part of the forest, the same direction where I had seen the silhouette in the trees. But the unsettling part wasn't the trail. It was the fact that the pine needles were all fresh, their scent still sharp, their color still vibrant.
Someone or something had placed them recently, maybe only minutes ago. I swallowed hard, my breath shaking slightly, even though the air was calm and warm. My rational mind whispered, it's just the wind, maybe an animal. But the needles were too perfectly aligned, too intentional. A path wasn't made by chance. I stood there for a long moment, listening, watching, waiting. Then, as I took a careful step toward the trail, a sound drifted from somewhere deeper in the trees, a soft, low, rhythmic tone. Not a voice, not an animal, not wind.
More like humming. A calm, drawn-out hum. Almost human, almost inviting. A shiver spread across my skin because I realized something. It was the same tone I heard last night, hidden inside the whisper that asked, "Have you seen them?" Only this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a call. Slow, patient, like someone waiting for me to follow. And as the hum continued, steady and almost melodic, the trees seemed to lean ever so slightly in the same direction as the trail.
As if the forest itself was guiding me, or warning me. I took one more step. The humming stopped instantly. The silence fell again, sharp, heavy, unnatural. And from somewhere in that silence, a single branch snapped. Not loudly, just enough to say, "We see you." My heartbeat echoed in my ears. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. Not in any way. Not even in the quiet.
The forest didn't grow darker as I walked deeper into it. It simply grew quieter, as if each step peeled away another layer of the world I knew, replacing it with something older, something that had been waiting. I followed the faint hum, the same low vibration I had heard the night I first saw the silhouette in the trees. But tonight, the sound was different, less threatening, more like a guide. Leaves shivered above me, though there was no wind, and for a moment I could swear the branches leaned slightly, not threateningly, but expectantly, like an audience leaning forward in their seats. I stopped walking. The humming stopped too. For several seconds the world held its breath. Then, a soft tap. Another tap, like something stepping lightly on hollow wood high above the ground. I lifted my eyes, and there, between the black outlines of the branches, a figure stood, silent, still, watching me. But unlike the other nights,
This one wasn't hiding in the darkness. It stood in the open, framed by moonlight. And what struck me first wasn't fear. It was recognition.
Not because I knew the figure, but because the posture, the stillness, the way it watched. It mirrored the way I had been watching the forest for weeks, curious, searching, waiting. The figure didn't move, didn't lean, didn't turn its head. It simply existed there, like a question carved out of the night. My voice broke the silence, soft and cautious. "Are you following me?" The branches stirred again, not from the figure, but from something deeper in the forest, a larger presence, a more deliberate movement.
And all at once, the silhouette stepped backward, not climbing, not vanishing, just one quiet backward step, and the shadows swallowed it whole. The hum returned, lower, closer, warmer. The forest no longer felt like it was hiding something from me. It felt like it was leading me somewhere. But before I could move, a memory surfaced, clear, sharp, uninvited. My mother's voice, years ago, saying quietly,
"Some things in the trees don't follow you. They wait for you to be ready." I never understood what she meant, but tonight, those words settled around me like falling dust. The hum pulsed once more, this time directly behind me. I turned, and what I saw wasn't a figure, not a shadow, not anything with form. It was simply a presence, a heavy, gentle awareness, standing no more than an arm's length away. My breath trembled, not from fear, from the strange, overwhelming feeling that I had been expected. Something shifted in the air beside me, like a whisper brushing the edge of thought. And with that, the forest's hum faded, leaving only one sound behind. A soft voice, not quite spoken, not quite imagined, asking a question that made my skin prickle. "Have you seen them clearly yet?"
I didn't return home that night. After what happened in the clearing, after seeing that figure watching me from the branches, I kept walking deeper into the woods, almost as if the forest itself was guiding me. The air felt strangely warmer here, like the trees had formed a barrier that shielded me from the cold wind outside. Every few minutes I would stop and listen, wondering if the soft steps behind me were mine or someone else's. But for the first time since the incident began, the forest did not feel hostile. It felt expectant, as if it knew something I didn't.
I reached a small ridge where the trees opened just enough to let the moonlight spill into a pale, shimmering pool on the ground. The silence here was different, heavy but peaceful, a kind of silence that makes you feel like you're intruding on a place that shouldn't be seen. And then I noticed something odd. The trees around me weren't swaying, not even a little, but their shadows were. They stretched slowly across the ground like long, thin arms reaching toward me. Not threatening, just watching, observing, almost curious. I whispered to myself, "Have you seen the men in the trees?" The question didn't feel like mine anymore.
It felt like something the forest had placed in my mind. A memory flickered, something I had forgotten for years. A childhood moment. I was 6, standing at the back of my grandmother's house, staring at the woods behind it. I remembered telling her that I saw people standing in the branches, still as statues, but smiling like they knew me. And she said something I haven't thought about since. If they watch you, it's because they want to know who you're becoming. I never understood that, not until now. Because in the moonlit stillness, I sensed the same watching presence, not malevolent, not predatory, but attentive, like they were waiting for me to ask the right question. So I finally did. I looked up at the branches and whispered, "What do you want from me?" There was no sound, but something changed. The shadows lowered themselves, almost bowing, and the cold fear I had been carrying all night slowly drained away. In its place came a strange calmness, a feeling of being acknowledged. Then I heard something, not footsteps, not breathing,
but a soft pull, like the air changing direction. The forest was guiding me again, toward a place I somehow knew existed, though I had never seen it before. A clearing deeper in the woods where truth waited like a quiet ember. My heart beat slower, my breath steadied. The fear was no longer fear, just anticipation. The men in the trees were no longer following me. They were leading me. And for the first time, I wanted to know why. The forest was quieter than ever. Too quiet, almost. Expectant. Not dangerous, just waiting, like it wanted me to listen. I stood beneath the same towering pines where everything had begun. The fog moved lazily between their trunks, brushing past my arms like something alive yet gentle. The air felt thicker now, humming with that faint vibration I'd felt in earlier nights, like the forest carried a pulse of its own. Somewhere behind me, the branches whispered again, but this time, they didn't sound like warnings. They sounded like invitations. I took one slow breath, soft, steady, letting the calm sink into me. The fear that once tightened my chest had dissolved long ago, replaced with a strange understanding I couldn't explain. Then, like they'd always been there, the silhouettes emerged between the trees. Tall, still, unmoving shadows carved into the fog. The men in the trees. But tonight they looked different, less like watchers, more like echoes of something that used to exist in this forest, something old, something patient. And for the first time, I didn't step back. A wind drifted through the branches, cool and slow, carrying a faint whisper. Not words, not language, just a feeling. You finally see us. No threat, no anger, just recognition. As if I had spent all this time misunderstanding them. I blinked, and in that single heartbeat, the silhouettes softened, dissolving into streaks of moving fog. The shapes that once haunted my nights simply folded back into the forest as quietly as they first arrived.
like they'd finished their part, like their purpose had never been to frighten me, but to guide me. The wind settled, the forest exhaled, and I felt it, the strange truth settling inside me.
Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some are meant to be seen just once, so you never forget how small and incredible the world can feel. I turned away from the woods with a calm I'd never felt before, the night cool on my skin. But just before stepping onto the trail, I looked back one last time. The trees stood silent, the fog hung low. Nothing unusual, nothing strange, except high on a branch, a single dark figure watched gently from the shadows.
Not menacing, just making sure I saw. And when the breeze shifted, it disappeared once more. I walked home with a quiet heartbeat and an unusual peace, knowing one thing clearly. Somewhere in that forest, the men in the trees still stand, not to follow, not to frighten, only to be noticed by those who look long enough to understand. And maybe that was all they ever wanted.